Dinesh D'Souza, welcome to the Officer Tatum Show. I really am so excited to talk to you about this. I want to hear your thoughts on this film that's coming out.
The movie starts with October 7th, and you know what's so creepy is this is not October 7th from the Israel point of view, because the Israelis, they got some footage later, but Hamas filmed the whole thing. So this is like having a GoPro on your head and riding on a motorcycle with Hamas.
Some people think, well, they won the war, but they were there 2,000 years ago. And all of these different claims to the land that try to make it unjustified that the Jewish people are there.
You know, the remarkable thing is when God gave the land to Abraham, you have to remember he gave it in perpetuity. So regardless of whether you think that the old Jewish covenant is now replaced by a Christian covenant, that's all true. But it's not like God took the land back. In fact, you cannot take it back. Let's remember the real colonizer here is Islam.
They push the magnitude of what they claim to be brutality, and it pricks the hearts of people. Where they go, Israel's just killing these innocent people, but they don't watch the footage that you're talking about. I saw a small clip, and thank God somebody blurred it out, of them just chopping somebody's head off.
But what I've done is I have taken some vivid scenes, and the first 10 minutes of this film, I put you on the scene of October 7th.
Dinesh D'Souza, welcome to the Officer Tatum Show. I really am so excited to talk to you about this. I couldn't wait to message you on X because I said I want to hear your thoughts on this film that's coming out, Dragon's Prophecy. It's a limited release on October the 6th and October the 8th. It's streaming on Salem now. People can go to the website to find it at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. Talk to me about this film because I saw a little bit of it. I just saw a snippet of it. I saw you talk about it. This seems like so important and a critical film to display. Can you tell me a little bit about it and, kind of why you wanted to create a film like this?
Sure. It started out with my sort of discovery of biblical archaeology. My wife and I did our first trip to Israel in the end of 2022, and we discovered that all the stuff that's in the Bible that for hundreds of years has been only in the Bible, figures like King David or even Pontius Pilate, there was no non-biblical or outside the Bible corroboration that these people were real. And of course, for a century and a half, skeptics and atheists have said, no, the Bible was written hundreds of years later. A lot of this stuff is kind of embellished or made up. But now archaeological discoveries are coming out of the ground, like in the last 20 years. Seals and inscriptions and stones. And it's basically validating the truth, the historicity of the Hebrew and the Christian scriptures. These were real people, real events. So I was very intrigued by all this, particularly because I've done work in Christian apologetics. Then along comes October 7th, and I, look at it and I realize I'm actually watching some of the videos, which not a lot of people have seen of October 7th. And I'm like, the weirdest thing about all this is that these people are really proud of what they did. They filmed it themselves, Hamas. And not only that, they put it up for people to see. There are recorded phone calls where Hamas terrorists are calling their parents like, Mom, Dad, guess what? I killed 10 Jews. And then Allahu Akbar, get mom on, go on WhatsApp. You can see my handiwork. I mean, this stuff is unheard of. Even the Nazis did not do this. And by that, I mean, when they had the death camps, they put them in occupied Poland. They put them in the occupied territories. There was not a single death camp in Germany itself. Why? Because the Nazis knew they were ashamed of it. They're like, we can't show this to the German people. They won't stand for it. So Hamas, in that sense, was in a league of its own. So I was trying to make sense of all this, trying to connect the biblical archaeology with the political events. And I realized they are connected. How? Because ultimately the underlying question here is like, whose land is it? It got me thinking about how any people gets a title to a land. What gives the Indians the right to India? What gives the Jews the right to Israel? And so I was thinking about this in its widest significance. And then along came this book by this fellow, Jonathan Cahn, and he makes a sort of astounding argument I'd never thought of. He goes, listen, October 7th is not just an historical event. It's a biblical event. And he says what that means is that the battle between Israel and Hamas is a kind of weird recreation. He even calls it a resurrection of an ancient battle between the Israelites and the Philistines. Now, not a lot of people know, but the word Philistine and the word Palestinian is the same word. It's the same word weirdly transported through history. But Jonathan Cahn's real point is not just that the word is the same, it's that the tactics are the same. So let me give you an example. In the Bible, you and I both know the story of Samson. It was this big, strong guy. He represents the strength of Israel. And guess what? He's captured. By who? The Philistines. And what do? They blind him. So they blind him much in the same way that Israel was blinded on October 7th. And then they drag him, the Bible says, where? To Gaza. The name Gaza is in the Bible. And this is the exact same area of Gaza today. At the time, it was called Philistia, and Gaza was one of the cities that the Philistines controlled, called Philistia. And then the Bible says the people of Gaza demanded, strip him and bring him out so we can be entertained by him. They're talking about
Mm.
Samson. And this again, resembles exactly what happened on October 7th and October 8th. The hostages are paraded out there. They're stripped of their clothes. The people are cheering. So in a weird way, you could say Samson is the first hostage of Gaza. And that just gives you a little glimpse of the way in which this film goes into, I think, completely new territory in showing a biblical perspective on October 7th, with also a hint of biblical prophecy, which, of course, is a hint of the last days and the things to come.
Dinesh, I think this is such an amazing film because I haven't seen anyone that articulates and put this together in the level of significance that you have. Because it's, even though I consider myself a Zionist, I still don't have all the facts and information. And you had mentioned the video. Now, we people have seen clips of it online. You've watched the entire video of, the compilation of all of that horror. I mean, what was some of the things that were done? Because people often say it's a rumor that kids were burned or whatever the case may be. I mean, what did you see on that film that was some of the most gruesome things that they had done?
I've watched about 30 hours of that video. My wife has watched even more. There's some of it that's just way too gruesome, and you wouldn't put it in a movie. The movie would actually, you couldn't even really rate it. But what I've done is I have taken some vivid scenes. And the first 10 minutes of this film, I put you on the scene of October 7th. Now, this is
Mm.
really my movie style, right? If you go back to 2000 Mules, I'm like, I'm not just going to tell you about things. If I'm going to talk about the burglary of Fort Knox, I need to see people coming through the window. So in 2000 Mules, I want to show you people at the drop boxes in the middle of the night. They look to the left, they look to the right, they've got big backpacks with ballots. You can see it for yourself. You make up your own mind. Similarly here, the movie starts with October 7th. And you know what's so creepy is this is not October 7th from the Israel point of view, because the Israelis, they got some footage later, but Hamas filmed the whole thing. So this is like having a GoPro on your head and riding on a motorcycle with Hamas through the fence and into Israel, right? And I can show it to you, and I'll put you there. Now, the other thing is, you'll see me at like a kibbutz right on the Gaza border. I'm also at the site of the Nova Festival. I'm talking to this one
Mm.
survivor who was like in one of those bomb shelters, and her boyfriend was murdered and right in front of her. Now, the remarkable thing about this footage is, as I'm talking to these people, we go back later and look at our footage, and I realize I have the actual footage of what they're talking about. So you have
Mm.
a woman describing what happened to her. She's living in a kibbutz. She hears these sirens. She and her husband and their two children run into this little room. Then the terrorists come in through the window. But I can show you the actual. I'm not recreating it. This is the actual footage. So it's almost like she's talking about it, and you can see it at the same time. So the movie really begins where it should begin. Because, I mean, you can't, if you're making a movie about World War II and the Pacific War, you got to start with Pearl Harbor, right? If you're talking about the Pacific theater of the conflict. Otherwise, it makes no sense. Interestingly, so few people around the world have seen this footage. And the reason is a tactical blunder by the Israeli government. They obviously have the footage, but they decided we're not going to show it. We're going to just bring in some journalists from like the BBC and Sky News and CNN, and hopefully it will open their eyes. Of course, you and I know very well that these people are absolute propagandists. They have no interest in the truth. And so that strategy was a complete failure. But as a result of it, I've got bombshell footage that people have never seen. And I begin really by putting you on the scene of October 7th, and then we begin to explore its larger significance.
Dinesh, I'm like I say, I can't say it enough. I'm glad you did this. I can't wait to see it because people need to see the other side because they see the brutality, and a lot of it is propaganda and fake. To be honest, I saw a video just yesterday of a kid that looked like he had stone wash on his face or like some type of concrete, and it was actually a filter because he puts his hand up and his hand turned into a stone color, and he puts his hand down and it removes the stone color. And as he's walking, some of the stone rubs off the stone color. It looked like he was under rubble and he has this gray, like he had a ash all over him. He walks by another guy and the ash kind of takes on another guy. I've seen the videos of the emaciated children that weren't real, that they weren't really starving. I've seen so many clips, but and they pushed the magnitude of what they claim to be brutality, and it pricks the hearts of people where they go, Israel just killing these innocent people, but they don't watch the footage that you're talking about. I saw a small clip, and thank God somebody blurred it out, of them just chopping somebody's head off. And I mean, it was so egregious. Someone just showed me a video, and I didn't want to see it because it's not blurred out. I didn't know it was going to be this brutal of the conflict. And I know this is a little off topic of in Syria with the Druze and the Christians. I mean, beheading people with a knife, just cutting a man's head off. And it's so egregious. And I think it's important. What other topics do you explore after you take us to the scene of the incident, almost the genesis of, kind of where the conflict picks up from back in Solomon Day? How do we go
So,
from there?
so we frame the conflict sort of this way, that there is a critique on the left that says, in effect, Israel is a colonizing power. Israel is occupying somebody else's land. And not only that, the Israelis are doing it through extreme brutality, genocide, and so on. Then I point out that there's also a very interesting critique from the right. This is somewhat unexpected. This is somewhat new. This is led by people like Tucker, but there are many other people saying the same things. And these are people raising questions like this. How do we know that the Jews of today are the same Jews, are the direct descendants of the biblical Israelites? Maybe God did give the land to Abraham, but did he really give it to like Netanyahu? And the good news about this film is, number one, first of all, I take the question straight to the horse's mouth, right? So Netanyahu, I'm talking to Netanyahu one-on-one. I got like 40 minutes with him. And there's about 5 or 6 minutes in the film. The rest will kind of go on my podcast. But I asked Netanyahu questions that he doesn't normally get. I ask him, what do you think of Jesus? Not a normal question for Netanyahu. I say to him, what's your answer to Tucker Carlson? And he goes right into it. And he goes into his own personal family story, basically arguing. See, let me point out a little tidbit. The history of Gaza. The Philistines used to occupy Gaza. And some people think that because Philistine sounds like Palestinian, therefore it's the same people. But it's not. The Philistines were actually Europeans. They had come from the Aegean. They had come from places like Cyprus. They had moved into that land and they occupied 5 cities that the Bible names, one of them being Gaza. So these are not the Arabs. These are not the people who are, quote, Palestinians. Those Arabs came from Jordan, from Syria. Many of them came from the Arabian desert. They moved there hundreds of years later, in many cases, well after the establishment of Islam. Let's remember the real colonizer here is Islam. And in the film, we focus on, the famous site in Israel called the Temple Mount, which is the place where Solomon had built his temple, the original temple, the holiest site in Judaism. That temple was destroyed in a Babylonian invasion. It was rebuilt by King Herod, the famous King Herod of the Bible. Jesus was in that temple. Remember when Jesus was lost at the age of 12, his parents were like, where the heck is he? There he is in the middle of the temple. That's the temple. The Muslims come in the 7th century. What do? They pull it down. They pull the remains of it down and they build a dome, the Dome of the Rock. And right next to it, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So you've got this symbol of Islamic conquest. And by the way, this is something that the Muslims do. They went, when they conquered Istanbul, they went to the church of the Hagia Sophia, the most impressive church in Byzantine Christianity. They changed that church into a mosque. So changing things into mosques is their way of declaring victory and doing a kind of dance on the top of the things that they've conquered. They're very proud of it. So all of this is discussed in the film, the biblical significance of the fact that three of the great religions of the world are all, in a sense, represented in this tiny piece of territory, not just Israel, but the actual site of the Temple Mount.
Yeah, that's thing. I went there, and it was very, if I would be honest, it was very frustrating for me to see how it played out, because a lot of times people traditionally go to the Western Wall and they do prayers and they do things like that. I didn't go, and I didn't celebrate it because I was actually angry at the reality of what it represented. Because I felt like that there was, and this isn't just my opinion, because I'm a Christian, and I didn't like that the Dome on the Rock was on the Temple Mount. I believe that the Jews should have that land, and they should be able to worship in that position where the holiest place of the religion was and stood, and the Holy of Holies was back against that Western Wall. And so I was frustrated, and I didn't want to partake in being a part of that because it made me more frustrated than not. But I'm glad that you bring that up, because that's a significant portion as well. When you go to Israel and you see that a lot of Jews can't, it's two reasons. I think they can't go on to the Temple Mount, and then also they don't want to go onto the Temple Mount because obviously the Dome on the Rock is up there.
Well, it shows the incredible restraint of Israel because, see, Israel, first of all, did not have that land in 1948, but they got it in 67. They control it. So they could actually take down the Al Aqsa Mosque. They could actually take down the Dome of the Rock. But they made a decision very early on that we're not going to do that. We're going to allow the Islamic authorities, these are Jordanian authorities, the Waqf, we're going to allow them to manage the mosque. And in a sense, we Jews are going to take the remains of the wall, the Western Wall, as you say. That is kind of the closest that the Jews can get to their old temple. Now, interestingly, this site is not the holiest site in Islam. The holiest site in Islam is the mosque in Mecca. And the second holiest site is the mosque in Medina. This is at best the third holiest site, but yet the Muslims treat it, when in fact, when one of the reasons that Hamas gave for October 7th is they called it the Al-Aqsa flood. In other words, they themselves said, we are doing this as a sort of protection of the Al-Aqsa mosque. They named the mosque itself. So all of this is, in some ways, you could say biblical prophecy is playing out in very interesting ways right now. And the film is right. And so it's a political film, but I think deeper, it's a spiritual film. And, these days we're talking about like spiritual renewal, moral renewal in the land and in the world. This film, I think, can really be a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. Dinesh, one thing I want to hear you say, because this is the clip that I saw that really drew my attention to the film, when you had articulated that in three facets, um, the Jews have entitlement to the land, right? You had mentioned either by conquest, either by a right given to them, which in this case the British did, or by inheritance or being born at the land, like the title of being the first there. Like in India, the Indians were the first there, and so that's their entitlement. Can you explain that concept? Because I said it to my wife the other day, and she was just like, "Wow, that's pretty interesting." Because some people think, well, they won the war, but they were there 2,000 years ago, and all of these different claims to the land that try to make it unjustified that the Jewish people are there. Can you explain that concept that you had mentioned on one of your videos?
Certainly. Let's, for a moment, I'm going to come back to the Bible in a moment. I'm going to put it to the side for a second and look around the world and ask a simple question. How do people get title deeds to any piece of land at all? And the answer is in one of three ways. The first way is you were there first. It's like you're the first Bedouin at the oasis, you get to drink out of the oasis. So original occupancy, that's the first one. The second one is you got it by negotiation. You made a treaty, so you got the land that way. The third is by conquest. And in fact, that's the most common way. If you look at most of the borders of countries in the world, how were they established? Some form of conquest. Now, interestingly, in many parts of the world, you could say that, let's look at America, for example. The Native Americans were here first. So in terms of original occupancy, they check that box. But on the other hand, Indian tribes were raiding each other, they were grabbing each other's land. Ultimately, the white man got it through conquest. And so the conquest box is checked by the white man. But in some ways, you could say that in a way, the Indians have it on one box, the white man has it on one box, so you can argue about it. Now let's look at Israel. The Jews were there first. They were the original inhabitants of that land, and biblical archaeology like documents that beyond a reasonable doubt. Check. Number two, after World War II, the UN basically said, here's the land for the Jews. The Palestinians, actually, the Arabs got a piece of it, but they didn't want it. They rejected that deal. The Jews took the deal, so they get it by negotiation. Number three, Israel has fought three wars. 1948, 1967, 1970. So they've held the land by conquest. So in other words, Israel checks all the boxes. And the Jews have a stronger claim, weirdly, to Israel than, let's say, for example, you or I or the white man has to America, because our claim is a little bit more questionable. Their claim is much more secure. And then if I turn to the Bible for a minute, the remarkable thing is when God gave the land to Abraham, you have to remember he gave it in perpetuity. So regardless of whether you think that the old Jewish covenant is now replaced by a Christian covenant, that's all true. But it's not like God took the land back. In fact, you cannot take it back, right? If you or I buy a house, all land is acquired in perpetuity. You own it forever. You can give it to your descendants. If somebody gives it to you conditionally and says, hey, listen, I can always come and take it back, then it's not your land. They never gave it in the first place. So I think it is a cardinal aspect of Christian orthodoxy to recognize that this land was given. I think it was one of the popes, actually. I don't remember if it was John Paul II or Benedict, who put it beautifully. He said, it is the holy land for lots of people, but it is the promised land only for the Jews.
Mm. I love that. I love that. I have to. I cannot wait for this to come out. How can people get to the film? Because we're a couple weeks out, I think, so we got a little bit of time, and this is going to air in plenty of time for people to see and watch it and participate. So, so how do people get access to this film? Where should they go watch it at? Is it going to be theatrical? Is it going to be a theatrical release? Let us know what that's about, Dinesh.
It's going to be in about 400 theaters, but it's only going to be there for 2 days. So it's a theatrical buyout. October 6th and October 8th. Easy to remember. We couldn't get it October 7th, so it's the day before, it's the day after, October 6th and 8th. But the very next day, October 9th, the film is available for streaming, DVDs. And so if you can get movie tickets right now, theater tickets, by going to the website, thedragonsprophecyfilm.com, thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. You can pre-order streaming, you can pre-order the DVDs. So do sign up now. And it is in many ways my most broad and powerful and cinematic film. And if you can possibly see it in the theater, it's a unique experience. I make them for the theater. Obviously, some people prefer to watch at home, and that's fine as well. thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. That's how you can see this film.
When you release it theatrically, is there a certain place where it will be released first, or is there a unique place where, because the first, it's funny, Dinesh, I met my wife at one of your theatrical releases in LA, and you did the video. I forget which movie it was or which documentary, and then we did a Q&A.
What year was it? Because it might have been Hillary's America, which was 2016, or was it even earlier?
No, it was later than 2016. So it had to be around 2017, 18.
Death of a Nation.
Death of a Nation. That's what it was. And so we did a Q&A at the very end, and I thought that was incredible. People had a chance to come and watch the movie and then get like not an author's, but a producer's Q&A. Are you going to do anything like that with this film, or is just way too vast
to be honest, we decided that, look, I mean, let me say just a word about the Charlie Kirk and the Charlie Kirk assassination. People don't get assassinated for what they think about tariffs, right? It is abortion, it is Palestine, and it is the trans issue. And so when I raised this issue with Salem Media that's doing this film with me, they were like, the security requirements of doing a premiere are going to be extreme. We're going to we don't just need security, you need like an army, because you've got people who are just unhinged on this issue. And so we just decided, look, we might do some receptions and things later. We're going to do it in private, not really announce them. So let's stay in touch because I'd like you to come to one of these, and I think you'd enjoy it immensely. But no, we're releasing simultaneously October 6th and 8th in 400 theaters. By the way, you can't get tickets by going to the theater. You have to get them from the website. So you can buy them in bulk. You can go with your church or your buddies or your family, but go to the dragonsprophecyfilm.com, order the tickets there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And I tell you what I'm gonna do. And I did this for another film, and I thought it was incredibly fun. And it's easier to secure a facility. You can secure one theater for me, but like what I did last time is I bought a theater out, and I invited some of the people to come see it because I don't want there to be a barrier for anybody. I want everybody to see this film, and some people can come watch it with me. But thank you so much, Dinesh. I'm looking forward to this film. All of your films are incredible. I mean, if somebody haven't seen your film, they need to go and watch everything you've produced so far. It probably take them a couple weeks to probably watch it all. But thank you so much, Dinesh. And then also outside of the film, how can people follow your work? I mean, will it all go back to the dragonsprophecyfilm.com?
Yeah, right now my focus is on the film, but you can follow me on X at Dinesh D'Souza. I also do a daily podcast. In fact, I did a really good one from Jerusalem. I did a one-on-one with Moab Hassan Youssef, the son of Hamas.
Oh,
This
that's
guy
a
is
good one.
like on the run because his life is in danger. I finally convinced him to show up at a studio in Jerusalem, and we did 90 minutes together. So my podcast is just called the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast. It's available in audio and video.
And before you leave, I want you to tell the audience this. You told me this before the show. I have always had a little bit of fear going to Israel at this point in time with the war going on. Um, what is your experience there? Do you feel safe in Israel when you have gone? Just give me a quick, 30-second experience of what you have, because I know some people are nervous like me, but we want to go to Israel. But what is it like? You just came from there not too long ago.
Yeah, my wife and I are donors to biblical archaeology, a project called the City of David. They're doing amazing stuff regarding the Bible, both the Old Testament and in some ways the New. And so we were there for the opening of the Pilgrimage Road. But we were there about 4 days in Jerusalem. And the amazing thing is, you could go to dinner in Jerusalem at a restaurant and walk back to your hotel right in the middle of Jerusalem at 10 p.m. at night. Everything is well lighted. I was surprised to see. I mean, there were kids on the street. There were single women walking by themselves. I mean, I honestly felt safer in Jerusalem than I feel sometimes in American cities like Houston.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you said that because I hope my wife listened to this. But thank you, Dinesh. I appreciate you, man. God bless
Hey,
you. Hopefully, we can connect soon in
I look
person.
forward
It'll
to
be
it.
a
Thank you
pleasure.
very much, Brandon.
All right. Thank you.